want to discuss the infamous Amy McPherson. She was a very controversial evangelist to some during her time, but she was also highly sought after and well respected by others. She was able to cross denominational boundaries and helped the Pentecostal movement in America. Her father was a Methodist preacher, and her mother was part of the Salvation Army. Amy had an experience in 1908 where she prayed to be baptized by the Holy Ghost. She did begin to speak in tongues that evening, and then the next day, while she was in church service, happened again. She would go on to share this experience with many people. According to Matthew Sutton in his article on her, she was able to intertwine Methodism, the Salvation Army, and Pentecostalism, helping to pave the way for Pentecostals to contribute to the fundamental movement and lead Pentecostals into the mainstream of American evangelism. She helped to broaden the influence of Pentecostalism and show how it fit alongside other evangelical denominations. Not all historians agreed with this and believed that Pentecostals fit with other evangelicals like the Methodists, Presbyterians, or Baptists. Men like Ernest Sandine and George Marsden believed that it was more so a fringe movement and sectarian. McPherson, however, demonstrates the fact that it was much broader and much more universal. During her life, she traveled the country as an evangelical preacher and even went overseas to spread the gospel. She fought the call at first to go, but as she had a near-death experience, she actually heard the Lord asking her if she would go, and she finally said yes. She was healed rather quickly from that and then never looked back on her calling to preach. Not only did she help to grow a movement and show others the mainstream ability of Pentecostalism, but she did this as a woman. This was during a time when women were fighting to have a voice and did not have a dominant voice in the church. Many felt that women should not preach. She, however, became the first female to deliver a sermon on the radio and eventually would create her own radio station. In a newspaper article about her in the Chattanooga News, she actually defended the right for women to preach. She stated, "The best reason in favor of women's rights to preach the gospel is that God's favor has attended it, and blessed the results will follow." Called into work at 17, I have been inactive practically ever since. I have seen thousands come to the altar laden with iniquity, then rise to their feet changed men and women. Another article in the St. Charles Herald pointed out her ability to actually lay hands and pray over someone to be healed. Though she did speak in tongues herself, she put much more emphasis on the healing qualities and her preaching of the gospel in terms of Pentecostal characteristics. This probably helped to better transition her between denominations, as many people can be more uncomfortable with people speaking in tongues. Now, she not only traveled as an evangelist preaching the love of God, but also established the Angelus Temple in Los Angeles. It became a spiritual home for thousands as it was filled to capacity for service each week. This then became the base for ministry for her. She developed an educational institution where they trained up other ministers, and then her church also was often filled with actors, actresses, politicians, and civic leaders from various denominations. So she transcended the denominations. She established the Foursquare Gospel Church denomination herself as well. Though her life was plagued by scandal, including doubts about a kidnapping that occurred while she was living in Los Angeles, and then she showed up in Arizona several weeks later. She was accused of having an affair during that time. as opposed to actually getting kidnapped. She was divorced and was a single mother then for many years. And then when she was proposed to again, the man named David Hutton was actually being sued by another woman who he had supposedly promised to marry. So there was lots of scandal, which caused people to doubt her. But Sister Amy, like I said, was kind of a controversial person to some, but to others she was highly loved and respected. She was very successful in building her church and denomination, and she helped to bring the gospel to many people, as advertised in Arizona Republican newspaper. She was the woman Billy Sunday.